We will now go to second reading of policy GBEB, which is employee conduct. Do I hear a motion to approve policy GBEB regarding employee conduct?
Madam Chair, I move the board accept policy GBEB, employee conduct.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Ms. Green. Okay, board, I will now open this up for discussion. Are there any questions or comments regarding this policy?
I have a couple of comments. Last month, I brought up a section about the social media part, and this still concerns me. No other district's policy that I reviewed includes such restrictive language as ours does. I like the School Boards Association model language that says the personal life of an employee, including their use of social media, email, and texting, is a concern only when it disrupts the educational environment. In this policy, I find it odd that we are removing paragraphs related to the arrest of an employee and summing it up in a couple of sentences. It sounds like we care more about someone liking a social media post than we do if an employee gets arrested. I'm just wondering, does anyone have any objections to using the School Boards Association model language in paragraph 5? And that would be the last couple sentences that have black lines through them.
Mr. Stacy, do you want to walk us through the work you've done for the last month?
As far as the social media piece, we have reviewed it with the attorney, and that really is their verbiage with regards to social media. Ms. Garris, you did ask about, like how prevalent is this concern with us? I did a little bit of research. We probably average about 2 times per month that we talk to employees with regards to social media. Our thinking here is that the more we put in the policy as it relates to the use of social media, the more upfront we are with employees. We only deal with social media when it becomes a disruption. And by disruption, I'm saying that somebody has called our office and made a concern, declared a concern, a complaint with regard to some type of post. I don't troll Facebook or any other social media. I don't, unless somebody brings it to my attention, I don't know anything about it. And so when it's brought to our attention, that's a disruption. And what we want to do is do that at the lowest possible level. And typically when we say 2+ per month, typically that's a conversation with an employee saying, you might want to consider removing this particular post. You might want to consider rethinking, putting that on social media. And I would say the majority of the time, most of the time, almost all of the time, that's all it takes is just that conversation, and that limits it. We did have with the new employee induction this past year, Palmetto Teachers Association came out, their attorneys, and did a session with our new teachers. They address social media with our new teachers because they are getting more and more complaints with regards to teachers, and especially kids coming out of college. They've put stuff on their Facebook when they were in college that probably they don't need to share with the general public because they're in public education. So I really think that the point here is to try so hard to put things in front of people. It's hard to have those conversations when it's really bad and the consequence is so severe. We just want to get in front of it as much as possible and just have those conversations at a much lower level and just be done with it. So I do appreciate your concern, but we did look at it and talk back and forth with it.
Understand. I'm just saying, I think the School Board Association, what they have in the model policy sums it up. Unless it prevents them from effectively performing his or her job duties and disrupts the educational environment, there's not much to worry about. We don't need to go in detail about how social media has the potential to result in disruption. It can be a violation of board policy. The board expects district staff to ensure all communications associated with social media accounts are consistent with their role. I just think as a board, we're just afraid of, what people might say on social media. That's why part of the board has agreed not to post or reply on social media. And as I told you, this is kind of a board decision. So I'm just wondering, does anyone up here have any objections to using the model language in paragraph 5 and taking out the section in here that's been put in by Lexington 1?
Would you like to submit that as an amendment, Ms. Garris?
Yes.
Okay, so please submit that as an amendment.
I move to amend the current policy in paragraph 5 that we remove the sentence, "Social media use has the potential to result in disruption of the school environment and/or the workplace and can be in violation of board policy and local, state, and federal law. As such, the board expects district staff to ensure all communications associated with their social media accounts are consistent with their role as district employees. Staff members will be held to the same professional standards in their use of social media as they are for other public conduct. If a staff member has a question regarding the appropriate use of social media, he or she should consult his or her direct supervisor or building principal for guidance. Unprofessional conduct may subject the employee to disciplinary action consistent with state law, federal law, and/or board policy."
Okay. We now have an amendment presented by Ms. Garris for policy GBEB. She's made a motion on the floor. Do I have a second regarding her amendment?
I'll second for discussion purposes.
Okay, we now have a motion and a second on the policy GBEB. Board, are there any discussion points?
I guess my concern, this is kind of a brave new world for us when it comes to social media. And I can tell you as an employer, I'm a little frightened by the social media giant that exists, and where it can become problematic for the employer and the employee relationship. So I appreciate the concern about changing. I guess my question is directly when it says this potential to result in disruption. Whose interpretation would that be, Mr. Stacy, based off of? I guess it's one thing to convict somebody of a crime. It's another thing to convict somebody of the potential for a crime. And so that wording does throw it off for me a little bit when we say potential for disruption, because that's a lot in the eye of the beholder. And so I guess my question would be, how is that determined? Under what mechanism would it be determined for potential?
Well, potential of disruption, in my mind, is it's brought to my attention. I mean, again, I don't troll Facebook, so I don't know what's posted there, but somebody has looked at it and has some concern about it. And so then what we would do in HR is we would review that. We would determine whether we think it's an appropriate post or not. It's judgment on our part. And then we would communicate with that person if we felt that it's something that needed to be removed. Now, everybody has the right for freedom of speech. What you don't have is freedom of speech free of consequence.
Correct.
And so that's what we would determine as an HR department, and we would work with our attorneys to make sure that, we're not overstepping our bounds, because I don't want to overstep my bounds. I guarantee you that. And so then at that point, we would make a decision about what to happen. But in all of the situations to this point, I don't know that we've ever had to terminate an employee for something that they put on. Well, I shouldn't say that. We've had a couple of situations where we've had some situations with employees where we've had to make some employment decisions. But it's not, the most common consequence is just having a conversation, talking with them, and then they take care of that situation.
Earlier, you had talked about pushing it down to the lowest level possible.
Would be the conversation with the principal.
Yes. Okay. So that's sort of step one, I guess,
Yes.
is what you're saying?
If it was brought to our attention, I would call the principal, say, look, this has happened. The principal would have the conversation with the teacher. If it's taken care of, then that's all that takes to happen.
That does happen. I mean, I can speak from experience. Probably half a dozen times, I feel like we
Yes,
had
sir.
a potential to maybe remove an employee unless we took action or had that conversation, critical conversation. And I'd like to say I'd saved 6 or 8 people's careers.
Well, and Mr. Oswald, I would say, to me, I read this more as a mechanism where the district is trying to protect the employee.
Exactly.
And, you know, because I did a little bit of research, because I was just curious, and there's all kinds of data, but social media policies for organizations and companies have just exploded in the last 10 years. And some of the data that I found, 80% of companies have, and this is on a very widely regarded survey tool, 80% have social media policies, and 70% of those companies have taken some sort of disciplinary action against an employee. But then when you kind of drill down, the thing that, you know, I tell my children, my teenagers, young adults, 70% of just under 2,400 hiring managers, when asked, said that they check social media when evaluating job candidates, and 54% did not offer a candidate a job due to red flags on their social media activity. And I feel like that, you know, especially because we have young teachers and young staff members, that this is a tool for the district and the school and the principal to mentor them and coach them.
expectations.
Because there's, as Dr. Guyton said, the social media world it's a perilous place, and you might have had terrible judgment as a 19-year-old, and you have really good judgment as a 25-year-old. But part of, you know, I think this policy is to help us as a district protect the employees. I don't look at this as a sword. I look at it as a shield, and I think that's a very important way to look at these code of conduct policies. It's we want to do everything we can to make sure that your job is safe and secure, and so this is the behavior that will help you keep your job safe and secure. So that's the way I look at it.
I guess where I land on this, I mean, when I became a physician, it was a decision that came with all kinds of benefits and cost, and it's a profession. So when people step forward and want to impact kids' lives, that's a calling, that's a profession, and with that comes responsibility. And whether you're the principal or the food services, it doesn't matter. You're impacting kids' lives. And I don't know, I mean, I've got one kid in middle school and 2 kids in high school, and I don't know who they come in contact with. I mean, I know some of their teachers, and, you know, but they are being influenced by those leaders at those schools, and what they post on their social media impacts the impression they leave with my kids. So I hear both sides of this. I get freedom of speech, but at the end of the day, they're educators, all of them, and they're affecting my kids' future and all of our kids' future. So I think we need, it's part of what you give to become an educator, the privilege to educate our children.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Any other questions or comments, board? Okay, hearing none, we'll take a vote on the amendment. We have a motion by Ms. Garris, a second by Dr. Guyton. All in favor of making the amendment as proposed by Ms. Garris, please say aye.
Aye.
One. All opposed? Opposed.
Nay.
Hey,
Nay.
Okay, so we have 1, 2, let's see how many we have today, 5. So the amendment fails. We now go back to the policy as originally stated. We're back, this is policy GBEB, which was presented tonight by Mr. Stacy. Are there any other questions or comments regarding this policy? Okay, hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of policy GBEB as presented tonight, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, Jada, did you vote? You agreed with it? You voted on it? Okay, so we have, the vote is unanimous.